In the Victorian age, it became known as the golden ratio. It was a mathematical formula for beauty. For centuries, many scholars believed the golden ratio gave the Parthenon its tremendous power and perfect proportions. Most notably, the ratio of height to width on its facades is a golden ratio. Today, the golden ratio's use in the Parthenon has been largely discredited. But Manolis Korres and most scholars believe another ratio does in fact appear in much of the building.
The width is, for instance, 30 meters and 80 centimeters. The length is 69 meters and 51 centimeters, the ratio being 4 to 9.
The 4 to 9 ratio is also found between the width of the columns and the distance between their centers and the height of the facade to its width.
The Parthenon, like its statue, exemplifies a certain symmetry, a certain harmony of part to part and of part to the whole. There's no question that the harmony of the building, which is clearly one of its most visible characteristics, is dependent upon a certain mathematical system of proportions.
For the Greeks, there was nothing better than a design based on the coming together of measures, of proportions and harmonies and shapes. It's rather like an orchestrated piece of music in which the harmonies of the various instruments are sort of fused together in a wonderful, glorious, orchestrated symphony.
With something like the Salamis stone's use of the human body as units of measure and the idealized human form to define perfect proportions, the Parthenon literally embodies the words of the Greek philosopher Protagoras, who lived in Athens during the construction of the Parthenon. Man is the measure of all things. But proportions and principles do not a perfect Parthenon make.
Next station, Acropolis.
Kathy Porosky has been commuting to work on the Acropolis for 10 years.
Acropolis.
In all her time on the Parthenon restoration team, she's still amazed at one particular achievement of the ancients: their precision.
We have a joint on the step of the Parthenon, which has been so thin, it's like 1/20th of a millimeter, thinner than a hair. Further up, you cannot detect the joint at all. And finally, probably due to an earthquake, a crack starts from one block and continues to the other, and the two behave as one.
This is the level of precision that the restorers need to match today. Their reconstructed column drum number 14192 was taken down because its base didn't fit. To achieve the required precision, they use metal smoothing plates, a technique based on ancient stone plates found on the Acropolis.
It's a very traditional way to level a marble surface. We're putting sand in these holes and they just moving it on the top of the stone. They can make very small differences between the surfaces.
Manolis Korres believes the ancient stone sanding plates could grind to 1/20th of a millimeter. But to stack and precisely align the drums presents an additional challenge. Again, the modern restorers uncover an ancient technique when they separate these two column drums for the first time in 2,500 years.
The ancients aligned the drums very simply, but again ingeniously. They had this block of wood that they cut in half. The lower part was inserted at the center of the lower drum, flush and perfectly fitted, and the upper part is centered in the upper drum coming down. So when the upper drum is placed, it centers onto this pin. The surface was perfectly connected, and it was so airtight that when we opened the drum, we found this, and it's 2,500 years old, intact.
The cedar is so well preserved that restorers could still smell the wood put there by Pericles stonemasons. Today, the modern restorers use the same method, but with titanium. But even though the restoration team has solved many details of the ancients' engineering secrets, they are still at a loss to answer the larger question. How did the Athenians build the Parthenon with all its subtle curves without an architectural plan?
There's a simple problem that to get a plan of this size at a reasonably small dimension that you can grapple with, something like this, which would be around 1 to 50 or so, that would be nowhere near precise enough to deal with all the subtle curvature and the minute adjustments that are also essential for this kind of project.
One of the subtlest of these curves can be found on the Parthenon's columns.
If we pull a string, we can see that from the middle of the column and up, we can see a curve, a very slight curve.
The curve is gentle, starting a little less than halfway up and tapering again near the top. It's an optical refinement called entasis.
Entasis means tension. It gives life to the column visually. It resembles an athlete trying to lift the weight, even the deep breath of the swelling of its chest. It is no longer dead stone. It has life in it. It has pulse.
These deviations from the straight, from the perfectly vertical, from the perfectly horizontal, are analogous to the curvatures and the swellings and the irregularities of the human body. And in that sense, the Parthenon strikes me as being a sculptural as well as an architectural achievement.
The entasis curve on the side of the column is so subtle and so slight, restorers can only draw it by computer. For the ancients to have drawn it at full scale, they would have had to set their compass at an impossible radius of nearly a mile. How they constructed the curved columns was one of the last great riddles left by the ancient Greek temple builders. The answer literally came to light at Didyma, 200 miles from Athens in what is today Turkey. Here, a team of German archaeologists was exploring the ruin of the Temple of Apollo. Built at the time of Alexander the Great, 150 years after the Parthenon, it was the biggest Greek temple ever conceived. 120 columns, each one more than twice the height of the Parthenon's. The German team noted an optical refinement, a curvature on the base of the temple, similar to that of the Parthenon. They suspected there might be more. Traversing the tunnel to the temple's sacred inner sanctum, open to the air, Lothar Hasselberger waited for his eyes to adjust.
Coming out of the darkness of the tunnel into that wide marble hall is a blinding experience. What then, to my surprise, came up were regularly incised horizontal lines, and I found them